Erin Diehl is the founder of Improve It. It's a professional development company who uses improv to push others to laugh, learn, and grow, helping them be the best version of themselves. Erin shares with us how she and the 22 improv professionals employed by her company and 5 internal team members work together to boost morale at companies, give them skills, and have fun while they're at it. On this podcast, Erin shares with us this beautiful philosophy of chasing failure, bringing failure out, finding the gifts that we have available to us from failure, and getting comfortable with it. She even shares with us some very personal gifts she's been able to extract and some professional failures. Get ready to enjoy this as you improve it with Erin Diehl. Erin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Sometimes I sing. Here we are. Thank you.
We are happy to have you. Can you tell us about the story of Improve It? How you got started with Improve It and developing the brand and where you are today with it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to give you Cliff's notes because there could be hours of therapy involved for where, it was an idea that came to me while I was in corporate America, working at a recruiting firm in business development. And I had always wanted to be a talk show host, but I never knew what I wanted to talk about. And I knew I wanted to help people, and I wanted to help people be their best selves. And so this idea was born through a friend of mine who was actually a female entrepreneur. She had this amazing blog back in the early blog days called Miss Career Girl. And she asked me to come to a pilot program that she was creating for female entrepreneurs. And I said, I'm not an entrepreneur and I have no idea what I want to do. But I was taking a lot of improv classes at the time. I was performing a ton of improv, and I was just seeing how it spilled over into my day to day. So I started taking her course and giving her feedback. And through that came up with this idea for Improve It. And I started telling people, one of which was my boss at my recruiting firm. And my boss she's just the best. She was such an advocate for it. She said, this is what you have to do. And one of our clients at the time was United Airlines. She said, tell said client about this idea. I told said client, United Airlines was our first client at Improve It. We got to pilot, pun intended, this idea to them, and they started giving us feedback, and then they started hiring me, and I started knowing that I wanted it to be bigger than just myself. And now we're a team of 22 improv professionals, 5 internal team members who change the course of professionals through play. That's it.
Very cool. So 22 improv professionals and 5, what was their role?
Yep. So internal team members. So 3 of which are part-time, 2 full-time. And we have worked from Fortune 500 brands to small mom and pop shops. And that internal team is what makes it all tick. But the facilitators and the improv professionals are who you see in action. So it takes all hands on deck for this thing to run.
Erin, why would a company want to hire improv professionals? What does it do for the company? Why would they do that?
Love it. So I will say this. I just did a show on this myself recently. And the number one reason a company should hire Improve It, or a company like Improve It, but Improve It would be cool, is to boost company morale and team morale. So really quick, the overarching theme of improv is to learn, and to learn by play. You're experiencing it. We call ourselves professional pretenders, right? So when we show up and we have you experience the right way to do a soft skill, so it could be anything from presentation skills to team building to effective communication to leadership to networking, and we have you experience the right way to do that, the muscle to go to in the real world, right? So at the same time, everything has this underlying undertone of support and collaboration. So when people start to feel that and the morale feels high, people start to want to show up and to share ideas. And when people want to do that, that's when productivity rises. And we know what happens when that happens. When productivity rises, that's when organizations and the people within those organizations thrive. And that is why you should hire or just take an improv class. I truly believe that if everyone in the world took an improv class, it would be such a better place because it's this magical teaching tool. You can never replicate what happens in a workshop or on stage or in a rehearsal. It's so addictive because it creates this magical bond that cannot be recreated or replicated ever again.
Thank you for that. You had mentioned a couple things in leadership, in networking. Outside of the answer of it impacts everywhere, where in the companies who you've done this with, where have they found they've gotten traction with after working with your company? In
Hmm.
what types of scenarios do they use improv to their benefit?
It's a great question. And we've been in business 6 years ish. And through the course of time, we've had clients that we've worked with repeatedly year over year. Motorola Solutions is actually one of our biggest clients, and we have embedded our training into their onboarding for their sales professionals. So we help them think more quickly on their feet. We've actually customized work for them, so we provide customized scenario training for things that they might see in real time. So it's really helping professionals with Motorola, helping them, number one, think really quick in a scenario where they have to be really agile and adapt and change on a dime. So we've seen from onboarding, so that's one example. So right when you get hired into an organization, to senior leadership change and evolve through the work that we've done. US Cellular, we worked with their senior leadership team, and these are like two competing companies that I chose to talk about here. But we worked with their senior leadership team about presentation skills because a lot of leaders were feeling not as confident. This is pre COVID. And we have changed the game for them in the way that they show up when they present. So it could be, we have 11 different soft skill offerings. And usually, how we work with a client is, number one, we understand what are the challenges that this team is facing. What do you see day in and day out that they are struggling with? And then what do you want them to walk away with? And once we know those two things, we can generally, within those 11 soft skills, pinpoint a solution for them. And if not, just like with Motorola, we customize our trainings, or we have an awesome tool belt of amazing resources that we can refer them to. But generally, we have a solution, and it's so dependent on the objective. We always say we measure the ROO versus the ROI, which is the return on their objective. So we get so clear and so specific on that, and that's how we measure the success of working with a client.
Love that return on objective. When working with a client, I'm curious, what approach do you take with people who go, improv? That's kind of like acting. I'm not that type of person. That's not really what I do. How do you get over that hurdle with people?
That's a great question. We get that question all the time. So I'll say this: a lot of times, leaders who book workshops with us are concerned about the most introverted people on the team. And I'm going to tell you this: of our staff of 22 improv professionals, I would say 75% are consider themselves introverts. So, the makings of a great improviser are not to be the funniest person in the room. It's to listen and to react truthfully and in that moment to what is being said. So, for the people who may be more hesitant or just feel like, oh man, I don't want to do this, they're going to make me stand on stage and bark like a dog. That is never our intention. Our intention is to create unity, to create a cohesive ensemble with the people in the room. And so we're doing things together. And so our workshops go from a low risk activity to a high risk activity at the very end. So we're having them first dip a toe, dip a foot. By the end, they've got the whole leg in. And that's because we know we have to help them ease out of their comfort zones. And we say that we set up at the very beginning of every workshop, this is a safe space. What you put into today, you will get out of today. I have watched some of the most introverted people, or people who would consider themselves introverts, shine in these workshops, because it's not the funniest person. It's usually not, Sam in sales who's going to rock this workshop, who's the most outgoing, charismatic person. They're going to do okay. But if their job is if they think that, the role of this workshop is to come in and to give funny one-liners, absolutely not. The role is to communicate and collaborate with the people in that space and create something together versus it be a one-man show. So it's so interesting, because a lot of times people go right to those people they're worried about. And those people are the people that shine because they're great listeners, and they are right and present in that moment and able to just say something to the other person that sparks laughter or just moves a conversation or an activity or a scene forward. It's very interesting, and it's a question we get a lot. So I totally see that, but it's so refreshing to watch a group of people shine when they think that they are not going to. And that's our role too, is we will have their back and make them look like rock stars no matter what.
Erin, as you're talking, you use comedy to professionally develop teams, right? That's kind of what you say is kind of one of your skills, your core competencies. And you come on this podcast, you got a couple of business guys asking questions in a very stiff manner. You must be sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, I got to lighten this mood up. We got to get going here a little bit," because you use laughter as a way to boost company morale, to bring people together, to in a way, it almost seems like you help them be a little more vulnerable within their team, so they could be more a cohesive team. I love the way you kind of approach that. But why is laughter such a big component? Like, can't you do that without the improv and let's just do role plays and I walk in and talk to me about what role laughter plays in business, because it's lacking, quite frankly. It's lacking in my business life and probably in Rich's business life. How can we bring more of that into our life, and why is it so important?
I'm going to make y'all giggle right now. So, okay. See, I did it. Even just saying the word giggle, you had a little beep. If you're not watching the show, you're listening. They smiled. So this is why I love laughter and comedy as a teaching tool, and why I think it's the most important. Number one, this is pre-COVID times, okay? People wore masks to work. And I'm not talking about a physical, KN95, whatever it's called. Okay, I'm talking about they wore a shield because they didn't want to be seen as vulnerable. They're still, I actually think 2020 did something really interesting. It made us more vulnerable. It made us show up as more human and more realistic. We got views into people's homes and their lives. But these masks that we all wore to work, and I wore one too when I was in corporate America, I mean, they are just shields. And when you allow laughter to break down those barriers, that is when people feel like they can show up as themselves. And so when you start to feel like, man, I'm having fun, I'm showing up as me. This is Erin Diehl, raw and uncut. You know what I mean? The real deal. This is what makes you want to show up more. And so when we break down those barriers, that's when people say, hey, I'm learning. I'm actually becoming my best self through play. And when we start to become our best self, that is when we thrive professionally. So it's just this teaching tool that automatically takes down those shields and allows people to be raw and authentic and real, which in my opinion is the only way to go up into work or to show up, because it's so much harder to be somebody else when we can just be ourselves. So that's why laughter, it's just invaluable to me as a teaching tool. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget just the very first time I led a workshop, and I just was thinking about this today, so this is like a relevant story. I just remember standing in this room and just feeling the energy of the people, feeling the energy we created and getting chills because I said to myself, this is where I'm meant to be. This is what I'm meant to do. I felt the same way the very first day I walked into level A, second city, with my teacher, Jay. And I just was like, this is where I belong. This is where I'm allowed to be my truest self. And that's what I wanted to replicate in corporate America because, quite frankly, I was acting different. And I wanted to see that in myself and in others.
Yeah, I love that. So the formula, I think, is laughter takes the shields down.
Yeah.
The shields down help people become more vulnerable, really, in their environments, which helps them be their true self, which helps them become more productive, efficient, greater results, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of like the track that we follow. Love that. Like, it's kind of like a little bit of a formula here. And, certainly to your point, whenever, we're bringing in a guest speaker, everybody sit in your chairs. They're going to give a keynote speak for 45 minutes. You're going to check emails on your phone and be bored to death versus bringing on, more laughter into your group where groups getting together, gelling a little bit better. I love that from a cultural perspective and company morale perspective. I want to get off that topic though and go somewhere completely different. When we first started talking with you here this afternoon, you brought us back to when you were with the recruiting firm and you had this idea and this thought. And one of the first thoughts that came in your mind was, I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then 30 seconds ago, you said, I was meant to do this. Holy moly, that's a big track. And now I'm making you laugh, which is kind of cool. But
Yeah.
You went from I'm not an entrepreneur to I'm meant to do this. Walk us through how that happened, because there's a lot of people, certainly over the past year and a half too, who may have been thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, starting their own thing. But I've heard probably a dozen times in the last 2 years, yeah, but I'm not an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love this question so much. And yes, you made me laugh because it's so true. Uh, yeah. So I'll say this. A lot of entrepreneurs, I think, give themselves a limiting belief that they can't do the business side. I'll say this. I can give me a microphone in a room of people. I'm like in my element. I'm like, let's go, and I've always been that way, right? Like I knew I could do the speaking part, the teaching, the facilitating part where I was self-doubting myself and honestly comparing myself to other people was I've never ran a business before. How do I know how to create a P&L sheet? What's a balance sheet? What is a cash accrual business? What are these words? Okay, no clue. And I had a communications degree, right? And I had done a lot of work in corporate America, but it was all forward facing. I wasn't behind the scenes in any type of operational role. So it really, and I'm going to say this on top of that, I was an improviser in Chicago, and improv is the improv capital or Chicago is the improv capital of the world.
Second city.
Second city. I wasn't the top dog. I wasn't even like the middle dog. Like I was like the puppy. And I mean, I look back and I had so many fears. What are people in the improv community going to think? I did all of the schools of thought, and I was a good improviser. I was not great, and I still don't consider myself great, but I surround myself with the greats. And they make me look great because they're great. I'm going to be real with that. And I truly had to tell myself this is where you're meant to go. Because when I would stand in a room of people and do our workshops, I could feel it. And it wasn't even, I sometimes, if you've heard of power posing, I would stand, and my team and I still do this today. We power pose before a workshop or a keynote, anything we're doing in front of a group of people. And we talk with our arms wide open or whatever, hands on your hips, whatever makes you feel powerful. And I would stand in the bathroom stall at some of these places I was doing workshops, like, Tech 1871 in Chicago is where we did one of our very first public workshops. I remember standing in the bathroom with my arms wide open, and it's almost as if this force takes over my body and it's not me talking anymore. It's almost like you have to do this. Like, this is where you're meant to be. And when I go on stage, I get these little voices in my head, and they are just telling me, like, this is it. This is where you're supposed to go. Get ready. This is just the beginning. I just would hear these callings, like, this is your calling. So I had to really tell myself, get over the limiting belief that you don't know how to do accounting. Get over the limiting belief that you don't know how to grow a team or scale a business, and just start doing and start failing, right? Like, it was like fail after fail after fail. And I just kept getting back up again. And that's sort of one of the biggest tenets of improv comedy is there are no mistakes, only gifts. So you learn that as an actor and improviser, you hear no so many more times. If you're in sales, you're so used to hearing no. So I was already used to getting kicked down, and I just would get right back up and would tell myself the end goal is greater than these moments where I feel insufficient or I don't know how to do something. And then I would figure out how to do them, or I would outsource it and find somebody who knew how to do it to help me get it done and just do the things I had to do. There's still days when I have to do stuff in QuickBooks that I'm just like, oh my God, I hate this part of my job. Or setting up a 401k, I'm in the middle of doing that. I'm like, oh, somebody just take this over, And so it's things like that they're not glamorous, and people don't glamorize those parts. But
Yeah.
if you can just remember the why, that is what is the most important. That is what keeps me going and reminds me that it's bigger than me. And I just have to remind myself that. And if somebody's listening and that's something that they're interested in, you have to tell yourself that. You have to keep getting up, even if you get getting kicked down.
Yeah. So if I took all of that and unpacked it, which I think it's a phenomenal response to, how did you go from, I'm not an entrepreneur to this is where I'm meant to be, was really summed up there when you said I had to remove my limiting beliefs, just go and be okay failing, because it's not a failure. It's not mistakes. It's only gifts. And I love the way you kind of bring that together, but that's easier said than done for 99% of the population. Failure is failure to 99% of the population. There are only a certain subset of the population who look at failure as a gift or rocket fuel for the next level. It's going to drive me harder, and I'm going to take those learnings and develop it. How is it so easy for somebody in improv or in business or in life to look at failure as a gift and look at it in such lighthearted way, when sometimes those gifts are pretty hurtful? They can embarrass you in front of a crowd if you're an improv or stand-up comedy, or they can hurt you financially in business. I mean, this is real life. How do you take that gift component, failure component specifically? How do you help people accept failure as a gift when it can be so devastating?
I love it. Yes. And, which is another improv rule, we have a keynote called F words at work. Okay. Failure is my favorite F word. And shocker, HR department, I don't swear in it at all. So I'm going to just give you the overarching objective. Failure plus frequency equals the fundamentals of success. Fail often. Get used to asking yourself, how can I fail today? So when you go to bed at night, what did I fail at today? When you wake up in the morning, what am I going to fail at today? When you go to dinner with your family, ask your kids, what did you fail at today? Because when that mindset is your mindset, you're going to get used to taking risks, because those things that may embarrass you are only a blip in time. But if you know the why at the end, which I know my why, right? It's like, I'm just going to keep making mistakes because eventually it leads me to something greater. And it also means that I'm trying. We talk about in the keynote just having an accountability partner for failure, for rewarding yourself every time you fail. I got stories on how to do that. And then just the fundamental of success and all of that is just you are trying. You are doing something that 99.9% of people aren't doing. You're not sitting on the couch. You're getting up and taking action. And if you can reframe failure in your mind that way, the sky's the limit.
Love it.
Erin, tell us about your most recent failure and the gift that came from it for you.
And hopefully it happened today, because if you haven't failed yet, you have a few more hours left.
Oh, I failed today already significantly. We're launching it. Well, I have my most recent failure. It actually wasn't today that I'd like to share, but I can share with you what I failed at today. So one thing just to note is my team and I do failure parties every quarter. So instead of making like a vision board, we actually make failure boards. So it's a board with pictures of things that we failed at over the quarter. So mine is fresh in my mind. This happened last quarter. So it's actually ironic because I was getting ready to do a very large keynote, the one I just mentioned, F words at work, with a group of 600 women virtually in this room that I'm coming to you live at today. It was a platform, not Zoom. I'm a Zoom-bie. I love Zoom, but we had a tech check. And when I tell you everything that could have gone wrong went wrong in this tech check, like I couldn't even get my chat box to open, which my whole virtual thing is using the chat box. And the team that hired us, first and foremost, I had gone on the website and I had these limiting beliefs that I was with these amazing speakers. So I was thinking to myself, oh, some of them have green screens. I'm in my podcast closet, and thinking about just comparing myself, just, naturally what all people do is compare themselves to others. But I had to step away from that. And I said, okay, we're going to do this. It's going to rock. It's going to be amazing. Well, the tech check was a significant fail. We had to do a second tech check. And when I tell you I felt like such a loser, it was the like I had to go to bed early. It's one of those days where like I just can't do this day anymore. Like, it just radiated out of every pore in my body like you suck. So we did the second tech check and it surprisingly, we figured out how to make it work because it was a different platform. I'd never used it. Found my chat box, got up and running. And I'm gonna tell you what, that fail turned into quite a success. It was our keynote crushed. And we've had so many participants find us on social platforms, come to us and say things like fail yeah and boom, which is stuff that we say in the keynote. And it's just knowing how much stress I put myself through and how much negative self-talk I told myself, I would have never expected the outcome to be that way, but it was through a series of fails that led me to fail. Yeah.
Mm. You in that story had talked about failure parties, putting together a failure board and not a vision board. Never heard of it before. For our entrepreneurs who are listening, where they go, interesting, cool idea, put together a failure board. Can you give them some instruction on how you'd recommend they would go about having that get together and introducing the idea of a failure board and ultimately how it gets used?
Yes, I love this. Yes, we made this up. So this is totally just improve it, take it, use it. So number 1, grab an empty PowerPoint slide. Step 2, write down a list of everything that you failed at. Step 3, grab images from the internet that are thematic or show visually those things that you failed at. Put them on your PowerPoint. Grab your team. If you're not all together and not in person, get a Zoom meeting going. Pick a leader. One person starts and they share the failure board with the team. And we encourage both personal and professional fails, really leaning into the professional because we have to show each other that failure is okay. And that's really the work that I have been doing over the past year is really leaning into this notion with leaders that if you are creating this idea of perfection for your team, are they going to feel like they can take risks and innovate? So, failure parties allow the team to say, man, it's okay that I failed. Look at what, Dave in accounting did, like it's okay, right? And so generally it's better with a smaller group. We do this internally and it's just so fun and refreshing and we laugh at them. And if something does happen, we actually have a Slack channel for wins and a Slack channel for fails. We put some fails in the fail channel as well because it's nice to not feel alone because there is absolutely no perfect person in the world except for Oprah Winfrey. And Oprah Winfrey is by far the most amazing individual. She cannot fail. But other than that, everybody fails. So that's how a failure party is run. It's super silly. You can, use it as like a happy hour or just a team building initiative, but we generally take 30 minutes once a quarter and everybody shares their failure board and we share a few laughs too.
You had said Oprah Winfrey is the only perfect person. I thought you were going to go to talk show hosts and include like Jerry Springer, Montel Williams.
All the Chicago ones, right? All the Chicago ones.
That's right.
You just ended at Oprah right there. For those that are listening and not watching, over Erin's right shoulder on the wall, it says fail, yeah, with an exclamation point. Tell us about fail, yeah, and why is that on your wall?
Yes. Phil, yeah. So I was the host, still am the host of a podcast called Failed It. We are rebranding, so probably when this show airs, the podcast will now be named the actual name of our brand, Improve It. But it was all about you have to fail in order to improve, and we highlighted the lowlights of successful professionals and entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, and showcased their failure stories, their failure resumes. So we always ended with something we call the fail yeah lightning round, where we asked them a series of questions and they had to give us one word answers. And if they, a little improv involved, and if they told us more than one word, we would give them a big fail yeah. And so fail yeah became the tagline. And it's just a reminder to me too that, and anybody who sees this, that failing is so important. There are, like I said, no perfect people except Oprah, and to remind ourselves to allow those fails to propel us forward. So fail, yeah, it's kind of like, it's a little punny. I like puns, shocker. But it's a fun thing for what we called the Failed It family, also Improve It family.
Thanks for that. And what percentage of your business comes from a referral or networking, and what percentage of your business comes from traditional marketing?
Oh, great question. If I had my data points open, I could tell you actual facts, Rich.
Ballpark.
Ballpark. I would say referrals, probably referrals and repeat makes up about 50%.
Okay.
The other 50 comes from prospecting. Well, we broke down that 50 into several different buckets. Prospecting, which, obviously we're going after those clients. And then we also I'll say this, in 2020, it was really unfortunate timing. We changed our URL from Improve It Chicago to learntoimproveit.com. And we did a refresh of our brand. On top of that, the world shut down. So we were very low in SEO in 2020, and we're just coming back up this year. So organic reach to us last year was really low, but now we're starting to see an uptick in that with in-person events coming back and our SEO on the rise. But we do a lot on social, and we do a lot, but we don't pay anymore for any online presence other than our podcast and things that we create. But no more Google ads, no more Facebook ads, no more Instagram ads. It's all us.
Great. I imagine most entrepreneurs listening would love to have a 50% referral and repeat business. What are the active tactics or philosophies that you employ to have generated that?
Yeah. So, man, I'm really proud of our workshop process. We are improvisers, but we are type A to the core. So we have a really sufficient and very robust process from the time somebody comes to us through a discovery call to the actual sales call, proposal, and then the actual booking and logistics of a workshop. So post workshop, we give them data points of the participant feedback. We send them a picture. We're checking, and we also have, in conjunction with every workshop, a DIY e-learning course that's built to follow up with the workshop and then add in some key elements of learning that we didn't discuss in the workshop, but it was our response to a client saying, well, we had this amazing 2-hour session in person or hour and a half on Zoom. How can we continue the learning? That was our response. So after we're gone, they still hear from us for 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks, 9 modules, and it comes to them via email. Automatic. It's a very sophisticated system called MailChimp. So then we from there, follow up with them in 3 months just to check in. How's the team? How you doing? What's going on? Before COVID, when people were actually in offices, we would send them handwritten thank you notes post workshops, and we would send them a referral ticket. So if you book another workshop if you personally book another workshop within 60 days, you get 6% off. And then the second piece was, here's a 5% referral coupon to give to somebody that you know. That used to work, and we didn't have everybody do it, but we did have several people, come back to us, and we remember every client for every holiday. We send gifts. I mean, we stay in touch, and then we make sure they're on our newsletter list so they hear about new upcoming programs and happenings. I think we do a really good job of the user experience as well. We make sure we are treating them the way we would want to be treated as service providers, and we give excellent service so that they want to tell people about us, and then they want to come back.
The theme and all
That's
the
it.
things you just said, what I heard was you are giving to your customers and you're adding value. You add key elements of learning after they attend the workshop. You enroll them in a 3-week program with 9 modules. 3 months later, you're checking in saying, how is it going? Are your people using what we taught them? You're sending handwritten thank you notes. You're sending them gifts on appropriate holidays. It's all about giving is what I'm hearing. It's not about this high pressure, tell me who are your friends and families and neighbors who may be in businesses who we could end up doing business. Like, it's not that. It's just all about this giving heart and this sense of servant leadership of the customers that you have.
That's it. That is 100% it. And that's I think about how I would want to be sold to, because I was in sales. And I'll tell you this, I did sales for a recruiting firm. So I would go to some networking events, and some of these people who were my peers and colleagues would come up to me and try to network, and it just felt slimy. I'm like, I'm not even buying what you're selling. I'm your competitor, and I don't feel like I could trust you. So I really flipped the switch, and my team and I really dissect, how would we want to be sold to? How would we want to feel? And that's what you said. It's servant leadership. It's giving, because also improv is all about give and take, and you got to make sure you're giving in order to receive. So that's a big piece of our mission and core values.
Thanks. You had talked about kind of your inner voice before you get on stage. And that is the big moment for you in your businesses when you get on stage. And every business has its own big moment, whether it be a board presentation or even hopping on a Zoom, or there's a big moment for people. You had all these positive things that you were reciting, and it just seemed automatic to you in your inner voice. How have you gone about cultivating that positive inner voice when a big moment is calling upon you?
Those are such great questions. And let me just say this to both you and John. You are improvisers, because this interview is very organic. You are picking up what I'm putting down and asking the right questions. I mean, y'all are rocking these cues. So thank you. That is a fantastic question. And I think it all comes down to energy, and it all comes down to, I hate when people say this, but it comes down to self-care first, because I always say, I can't fill others' cups if I can't fill your teacup if my kettle is dry. It's got to be full. I got to have the fullest tank ready to go so I can give. And I'll tell you, if I do 2 workshops in a day, I'm coming home and I'm doing a face plant on the couch. My husband calls it burning the candle. And I literally, it's like I have nothing left to give. If we do a full day workshop, I am literally in bed by 8 p.m. It's so energetically exhausting, because I'm giving it to people to get them to feel it, right? So I got a morning routine that I have been doing for years that just fuels me. I get up, I work out. I have a 2-year-old, so I now made sure I get up before him. I do my works, my exercise, my workout. I meditate. I'm very big into mindfulness. That started years ago for me. I was an infertility warrior. And so I really learned meditation through that practice and really set myself up for a lifetime of meditation. And so those two things have to happen for me to feel like I'm ready to go. And so that voice comes to me through meditation too. I feel like meditation is about receiving, not to get too super spiritual, but it's, meditation is about receiving, prayer is about asking. So I like to receive that energy. And so when I feel those things are in place, that's when I can go and do the things that I know that I'm meant to do. And because I've taken that time for me first, but if those things don't happen, my whole day feels different. So it's really about that self-care, because if you, and I say this to so many friends who are new moms, or people who are running large teams and they're overworked, it's like, what did you do for yourself today? It- what did you give to you? Because you're giving, 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 and it's not selfish. It's actually very selfless to give to yourself first so then you can give to others.
Yep.
You had said
Okay.
you're an infertility warrior. What is that? And tell us about the gifts associated with that.
Right? I mean, you guys are improvisers. I'm just telling you, these questions are amazing. So my husband and I have been married 8 years, together for 13. And I knew I wanted to start a business and I wanted to start Improve It. Well, not a business. I wanted to start Improve It first. Remember those limiting beliefs. And we came around to like us trying to have children, and we weren't able to through a series of tests and results. And we actually found out that we had a mutated gene that both of us carried. So we were both carriers of this gene called GJB2, which means that we were 50%, we had a 50% chance of having a child who was born deaf. So we went through IVF multiple times and had a series of fails. I mean, fails, 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 and that's a really emotional journey for both the person carrying and then the partner. It's just it's a really, really hard thing. And so I had to, and I say this, my lesson learned, my gift is I had to learn to mother myself before I could mother somebody else. And that's what I did. I turned to meditation, to exercise, and that process I'm forever grateful for, because I really did learn how to take care of me first. And now I have this amazing miracle baby who is fully capable of hearing, by the way. And we're just so lucky that we have him, but I'm also lucky that I like I said, there's no mistakes. That had to happen for me. I had to go through that, because if I didn't have those practices, I don't even know who I would be. I don't know the leader I would show up as every day. So it's really important for people to just know that self-care is not selfish. I think so many people feel that way, and I just don't want them to feel that way. It's the most important thing you can do for yourself and for your family.
Well, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that personal story. And I think it just speaks a lot to, a question I had asked earlier that I think you remind us or me of, and I'm sure our listeners of, is that failures in the moment don't feel like gifts in the moment.
Mm.
When you had that tech check and it didn't work and you went to bed like freaking out, right? That night, if I had asked you, hey, how's that gift feel? You'd be like, shut up. That's not a gift. But I think what we need to realize in the macro sense is that all of these failures or mistakes or learnings combined together give you the ultimate gift of development and learning. And I tell you, if there's one question I'm taking away from this whole thing is, what did you fail at today? And if the answer is nothing, well, you probably didn't try hard enough. And if you're not trying hard enough, why aren't you trying hard enough? And if you want to be successful, you should be trying. And I even take it, I have two sons myself, two boys. And, I rarely ask them, so what'd you fail at today? Or when I see them fail, go, hey, high five, great failure. That's awesome. But what a culture to create with your kids. What a culture
Right.
to create with your company, that people aren't shoving something under the table. Oh my God, I can't anybody find out about this. I screwed up. As opposed to, hey guys, I failed. Let me put that on Slack. Here's my gift. So I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And it just brings me back to what did you fail at today? And I think it's really important. So in that spirit, Erin, you said earlier on your podcast, you ask people a series of questions at the end of their podcast they can only give one-word answers to. And if they give more than one-word answers, we're going to say fail yeah. So I got some questions for you.
What? I mean, are you coming up with these on the fly right now, John? This is like you are you're both improvising. Like I am just impressed.
Ready to go.
Questions. Let's do it.
All right, you ready? So here
ready.
are my questions. I'm going to start really, really, really easy.
Okay, one-word answers. Here we go.
Your favorite talk show host?
Oprah.
Easy. What is your best characteristic as a leader?
Empathy.
What is the biggest gift you've been given as an entrepreneur on this journey?
Oh my God. Okay, give me the feel. I said, oh my God.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Oh man, this is hard.
Biggest gift.
Team.
Great. How many times should one fail every day?
30.
Why should a company hire Improve It?
Levity.
Ooh, okay. I was hoping you were going to fail that so we could say fail yeah again, but since you hit it, what do you mean?
So laughter, levity, positivity, that's what we bring. And we always end every workshop or laugh break, which is something we created in COVID, we crash Zoom meetings with short form improv, by the way, laugh breaks, just short plug. But we end the session by saying, here's our only ask. If today made you laugh or smile, that you pass that laughter, levity, and positivity to somebody else today. We need more of that in this world. And we started doing that in the height of COVID 2020. That was the way we ended our virtual sessions. And I mean, like we needed it. You know what I mean? We needed to say that. We needed to hear that. And that's what I mean is no matter what we're going to teach you, but you're going to learn through play and through laughter and through levity. And it's going to be this positive experience. So you're going to walk away feeling better than when you walked in.
I can't think of a better way to end this podcast than you telling us the way you end your sessions. I really appreciate your time today and sharing with us what you do and your story and getting vulnerable yourself. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, it has been a pleasure. And like I said, listen, when we hire, you are both going to be recruited because these questions were just fantastic. In the moment, you were improvisers, so nailed it.
Please stick around for a few more minutes while Rich and I break down this episode.
John, you ever had a failure party?
Well, maybe a pity party, but I don't know if I had a fail party.
Yeah. I wonder, here's one of those that maybe after we've had a guest, we're like, hey, we should probably do that. Maybe you and I should do that, is have a failure party together and do what she suggested. Have an empty PowerPoint slide, list your failures, find images. We share with each other. Maybe we'll even record it. And if it's not too much, maybe we'll end up sharing it on one of our quarterlies.
I think it could be a lot of fun. I think it could be very funny to make fun of failures in retrospect. I think it'd be really healthy for a family, for a company, for friends to be okay discussing failure and being open with the gift that it gives you. But I can tell you, Rich, in the moment, failures are tough.
Yeah.
You don't have the right macro perspective of what you're trying to accomplish. They can really bring you down. And this brings me, you and I've talked a lot in our career about just fundamental ability and the ability to regulate your mood and think more macro and think about perspectives. You think your life is bad, think about what other people are going through today, those kinds of things. But when you can add laughter to your failures and you're okay with failing because you realize in the macro sense it's going to give you a gift and you train your mind to accept failures, I think that's been instrumental in my career. It's been instrumental to realize that I failed in certain times. And as bad as I thought it was in the moment, it really wasn't that bad. And I learned a lot from it. So when I really did fail big, and I failed big in the past couple of years in a couple of different ways, I was able to pick myself up. And I literally had people asking me like, why, like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm okay. And they didn't actually believe that I was okay, because you can't fail that big and not and be okay. But I think when you can digest it in a macro sense and know that it's ultimately a gift, it's fuel for something else, it's a learning that you won't repeat again, those types of things. I really think when you add that acceptance of failure, the laughter, the macro perspective, seeing it as a gift, like Erin talked about, it can really change your happiness in life.
The predominant message I got from that is she really desensitized the pain of failure and how she goes about her work and what she recommends. And even asking a kid, you had mentioned that on a podcast, asking your kid, how did you fail today? And then celebrating that as a win for the learning that comes out of it. It's called a failure party, that she calls it. It's not a failure funeral, it's a party. Let's celebrate your failures and let's get some of the wins out of it. I love the desensitization to the pain of failure, so that when then that comes up, the knee jerk isn't cover it up, hide it. The knee jerk is, where's the gift? There's something here for me to learn. This is valuable. And the more painful it is, the bigger the gift is. Let me keep looking. What a positive mindset to take as we go across the bumps in the road.
If you find the gift. That's when you asked me earlier if I've ever had a failure party, and I said no, but I've had pity parties. And then pity party, it's like, oh, poor me. How did this happen to me? And you don't introspectively look back and go, what could I have done here? What did I learn from this? What will I make sure I don't do again? And when you extract those learnings from your failures, that's where the gift is. The gift isn't just failing and saying, yeah, I failed, this was a lot of fun. It's really introspectively taking that gift out of it, extracting that gift to make sure that you can now grow forward. And I think the other part of it too, part of the reason why people have pity parties when they fail is because they never fail for a long period of time. And there's one big failure and they can't get over the fact that they just failed. Versus if you fail 30 times a day, like Erin thinks you should fail, which is a lot in my mind. But if you fail 30 times a day, well, then when you fail, 2 weeks from now in a bigger manner, you're like, I failed like 500 times in the last 2 months. Like, what's this one? Like, I'm taking this learning too, and let's go. That mindset is really strong. It's very difficult, but it's a very strong place to be.
And what a gift that Erin got out from her experience in becoming an infertility warrior. I feel so honored that she shared that with us. I know that can be a sensitive topic for many, and it's a widespread thing. But for her to take that and turn that into the gift of self-care, and I wrote down, learn to mother myself before learning to mother someone else. The bedrock that she's created for herself of self-care, she said, one of the quotes that I love, self-care is not selfish. On that type of a bedrock of self-care, it's easy to see how you can accept failure and look for the gifts when you're that solid in your own self-care.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think along with self-care is, what's your objective? She talked about ROO, return on objective. Your objective in life is to live a nice, healthy, fun life, hopefully, or at least it is for me. Then why am I so darn serious all the time? Why are we laughing a little bit more? Why do I have a shield and I'm not as vulnerable? And she is right. Like, I think the one thing that COVID did is it created a lot of vulnerabilities. People recording news shows from their living room with kids running in the background. Like, you got to see the true thing. And I think that's an area that, quite honestly, I continue to need to work on, right? I want to laugh more. I want to be a little more vulnerable, as opposed to the mechanic, engineer, or entrepreneur who's kind of functioning through the business world with this stiff face. It's difficult. And if you have that, like, for example, for me, I have many times over my career been called, the stiff boss over there. Let's not joke around too much because John's so serious, right? If you fit in that category, like myself, and I know a bunch of people that listen to this podcast that fit in that category, bring and improve it to your company is huge for you as a leader, because it will also open you up and you will be more vulnerable in that moment and you will laugh more and your team will feel more comfortable around you as a leader. So for me, Erin and Improvement would be a perfect fit for a conference for a company that I was leading, because it would soften me up and help me become more vulnerable, help me be my true self with my team even more than I am.